On this episode, Alan Wilmot, the senior legal counsel at Heitner Legal, joins us to talk about gaming law. He gives some opinions on some of the most recent topics surrounding sports and the betting industry.
This is strange, this is strange, this is strange.
Everywhere you turn, it's the same old sports talk, the same headlines, the same news, and the same boring information. This podcast is here to change all of that. We bring you hot sports takes, winning sports betting strategy and picks, reliable gaming industry news, and breaking interviews with some of the biggest names in sports business. My name is Ryan Newpel, and welcome to the Noop Sports Show. All right, welcome back to another edition of the Noop Sports Show. My name is Ryan Newpel. I'm the host here with you each and every episode. Today, we're joined by another special guest, as we always are. Today, Alan Wilmot of Heitner Legal, the senior legal counsel at Heitner Legal, is with us today. Alan, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. Hey, I appreciate you being here. A little background, first of all. Alan and I, we met at ICE Boston, I believe, back in 2019. Met up there. Great guy, super well connected. And then as of late here, we actually got to hang out again down at the South Florida iGaming meetup. Alan joined me there and got to chat. So really enjoyed my time with Alan and thought I'd have him on the show and give a little legal perspective to this show. So Alan, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here once again.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate your time, and I look forward to talking whatever you have on tap.
That's right. That's right. So the legal side of sports betting, of esports, of fantasy, I know you do a lot in the, the IP space and some of this. And as we talk through this, I just want to warn everybody that this is not my specialty. This is not my space. So if my questions don't even match up to like a good answer, just like slap me over the face virtually and say, hey, that doesn't even make sense. But I'm looking forward to some of your answers because this is a space that really intrigues me. You know, the law and the trademarks and all this stuff around gaming really intrigues me, but it's just something I'm not super educated in. So getting your education is going to be amazing. What kind of things, I guess before we get going on what kind of things you're working on, give us some of your background, about how you got into this space, maybe where you went to school, things of that nature. Give us a little background of what you've been through.
For sure. So I went to law school, University of Miami. Graduated with a special interest in sports and entertainment. My initial work focuses more so on the intellectual property side. So with regard to trademarks, licensing, endorsements, sponsorships, anything and everything with regard to just entertainment and how you can monetize or protect your intellectual property. Over the course of time, I got really invested into the gaming space, specifically fantasy sports, around 2016, 2017, when the real boom was coming. Esports now with this 2019, 2020 boom that's coming, and just a lot of things in between with relating to those. So, I've gotten to work closely with a lot of daily fantasy sports operators who are, operating it all around the country. One of the main things I provide for them is quote unquote legal opinions, right? Which is what you require to get payment processing. So if you're any fancy sports operator, skill game operator, such as the esports, or even just any kind of skill-based gameplay where you're looking to do money in, money out transactions, all of those require a third-party legal opinion to be provided to the payment processor who can go to the bank and say, hey, these guys aren't a gambling product. They're good to go in accordance with UIGEA or any other kind of laws in place that prohibit internet gambling. And that's kind of where my niche, or I would say my role, has been with a lot of these companies.
That's amazing. That sounds like a much needed space. As you said, I mean, it's like one of those check boxes that these companies have to check off. And so that's cool. I'm sure you've been a part of some pretty big projects and things of that nature. Is there anything that maybe you've worked on in the past or that you are working on that you're able to talk about that I guess maybe are kind of high profile or something that was fun that you can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, a lot of the clients I work with are, I like to get in on the development stage, startup stage where, everyone has a great idea, but in terms of getting that great idea to fit within the lines of what's allowable in terms of what they want to offer, that's kind of where I like to, provide my 2 cents or just help them along the way and helping them get to the next level of what they want to do. So, for example, one company that I've been able to work with, Monkey Knife Fight, I actually started working with them probably when they first started, before they were even known as Monkey Knife Fight. And my firm, Heitner Legal, we were able to help them get involved with the processing. Then it was Vantiv, and now it's WorldPay. They were able to get processing, and we were kind of able to watch them grow to what they are now. I mean, Monkey Knife Fight, if you keep up with them, they just won 2 awards at the Fantasy Sports Trade Association. They have gotten some deals with the XFL in terms of being an official DFS provider. So being able to work with them from the ground level to see their growth from, Third Eye View has been really cool. And then there's a lot of other clients as well who have been able to, kind of get to the next stage. Granted, when it comes to these type of operations, funding is always going to be the most important factor. Because whether or not you have a great idea, it's tough to get it off the ground if you don't have the capital behind the support. So I always like to help in that area as well. If you have something that's really cool and, the only hold back is funding, I really don't think that should be something to stop you from continuing. So if there's any way I can help in terms of putting you with someone who handles business development, or someone who can help go out there and raise some capital funds for you as well, just kind of just general counsel as well as just helping with the business development.
Amazing. That's cool. That's I think that's good advice too. Sometimes people get discouraged with the funding piece of it, and so don't let that hold you back. You can always take some steps forward, even if you don't have that piece nailed down. So I think that was good advice there, for sure. What about professional athletes? Do you do anything with professional athletes in particular, or not really your space?
Yeah, we actually work with, my firm actually works with a lot of professional athletes just in terms of the IP side. So, for example, if you have an athlete who wants to start a clothing brand, or they want to start a charitable foundation, if they have just any kind of branding opportunity that they want to go forth with, we assist in filing for trademarks or helping with enforcement, helping, third party cease and desist from using whatever their brand is. So we work a lot with them on that side. Also, as well as the, endorsement licensing, we like to help negotiate, draft their deals, make sure they're being fully protected. A lot of things right now that I guess athletes are starting to realize is, in this day and age with social media and the way you can just go direct to consumer with Instagram or Twitter, for example, if you're able to develop your own brand and you're able to utilize your platform, which is, how many thousands of followers you have, you're able to get it out there quickly on your own. You don't have to worry about going through a third party who's going to try and take your IP and make it its own. For example, I don't know how familiar you are with the Kawhi Leonard situation with Nike and how they're trying to claim his clause, their own IP, and he's saying that's his. Back then, initially, when I say back then, I mean 4 or 5 years ago, you would have to have a Nike, for example, or an Adidas, try to work with you to develop a brand, and then they would use their platform to try to push you out. But it only works for so many athletes, for example. Who knows how many athletes Nike has on their roster that they aren't able to really monetize. They just have them, with an exclusive deal. So in case they hit, they hit. If they don't, well, you can't sign any other shoe deal.
Sure.
But now, in this day and age, with the ability to utilize and monetize your own platforms, a lot of athletes, for example, Fleet, with the Toronto Raptors, Pascal Siakam, the Toronto Raptors, they've been able to make their own logos, their own brands, and they're able to get with someone who can just design apparel for them and just push out themselves and maintain full ownership of the IP, of their products, of their work. And, it really benefits them more in the long run.
Wow. That's such an intriguing area. Like you said, these professional athletes now having a mind of their own, being able to kind of do their own thing really is the future that we're seeing here. And I think that kind of plays right into this whole this whole NCAA likeness debate and everything that's going on right now. Is there anything you can shed light on with that whole topic and how, I'm not going to be able to speak very knowledgeable to it, but is there anything about the whole NCAA likeness topic that you'd like to chime in on or have thoughts on?
Sure. I think with the NCAA likeness topic, it's a big issue in a sense that, for how many years now have people been claiming that, athletes should be able to, college athletes should be able to make money off their name, image, and likeness, just like any other student or college student is allowed to do. For example, if you're a high biochemist student, if you want to go out there and write a book after work or whatever, sure the school will probably take some if you're using school property, school product to kind of promote yourself, but still able to at least monetize in some way. But the name, image, and likeness issue, I think a lot of the hang up is that, people will say, well, yeah, it's good in concept and theory, but when it comes to, how many athletes really going to benefit from this, right? They kind of say, well, in that point, there's only so many Zions around, that it's only so many Trevor Lawrences that this can actually benefit. But in reality, the law itself, as each of these states are coming out with, the law itself, they're meant to benefit all athletes, and it's just to give them the opportunity to do so. No one's requiring them to be paid, it's just to give them the chance. So one big example, and it's something they really teach you in law school, it's a pretty common case, is there's an issue of a college football player who also was in the Olympics, and he would post videos of himself on YouTube or, whatever, doing tricks or things of that nature. And, YouTube, you can get paid for ads, and the NCAA made him take it down, and he wasn't able, or he was going to lose eligibility. Granted, who knows, he probably wasn't making that much money, but just the fact that money was coming in through his work that could be associated with his stature as a college athlete, or arguably maybe even not, it could have been associated with his Olympic athlete status. It still was related to him receiving money, so it may have taken down. I know one big thing was this past year was the UCLA gymnast, Caitlin O'Shani, who had that great routine, and she wasn't able to do anything with it after the fact. It was being shown all over the world, and people were saying, oh, look at this is cool, and it was just promoting her image. But other people were being able to use her image for whatever they wanted to do with it, and she had no control. She couldn't get any kind of commission, any kind of royalty, or anything of that nature. So it's really more so just giving them the chance. And I know one thing that Heitner Legal has been able to do is they've actually been able to work with Florida lawmakers in promoting a bill that goes to Florida athletes being able to use their name, image, and likeness, solely as it relates to Florida. But I think as more states, and I think there's a 20th state that just came out with the bill, I think it was Kentucky, as more states continue to promote these bills, at some point the NCAA is going to have to either turn on the gas with their own legislation, or they're going to have to compete to the states. Because right now what they're looking to do is just fight the states in court. But, there's only so much. I mean, granted, the NCAA is a huge institution, but if you want to take all 50 states in court, it's not going to be favorable.
Yeah, I mean, from an outsider's perspective looking in, it just seems like such a problem, and it seems like it's only going to get worse with the years to come, with all these kids now, even at their younger years, trying to monetize themselves. I mean, you got kids that are 10 years old trying to monetize themselves on TikTok and on these different platforms, and I just only see this getting worse as these kids get older and they feel like they have the right, and then they go to one of these colleges and all of a sudden they can't do it or something. It just feels like it's only going to get worse before it gets better. So it's something that really needs to be addressed quickly, I think, by the NCAA.
For sure. I mean, one prime example, like you mentioned, the kids younger and younger they're getting, the more and more they're on social media, and the more and more opportunity they have to monetize themselves at a pre-teen age. I mean, look at LeBron James' kid, Bronny Jr. Imagine what he could do once he's able to, granted, I'm sure there's going to be parameters in place, maybe his father, whoever his father works with, to, keep him on the straight and narrow in terms of not looking to monetize himself too quickly. But he's going to be a name. And if he goes to college, or maybe by the time point he has a chance to go straight to the NBA, granted, if he does go to college, I'm sure there's going to be, appeal. He could be the next Zion in terms of appeal, in terms of people wanting to follow him around and see what he's doing. They already do it now with high school. You know how many his high school games are on ESPN, ESPN2 every time. So
Yeah.
It's something definitely needs to be addressed.
Definitely. Well, that's a great input. I appreciate that. What about one other topic? Let's see if you have any thoughts on this. What about the whole Astros MLBPA debacle that we had, last month? I guess, was that a month ago? What kind of issues are around that you want to talk about? I know there was a lot to that, but were you guys dealing with that in any way, or do you have outside opinions on that whole debacle that went down?
Yeah, no direct interactions with the situation, but definitely I can give you an outside opinion.
Sure.
I think the whole situation with the MLB commissioner and the Astros and how it's being handled just goes to show how strong the MLBPA is as a union in terms of, granted, the individual players aren't happy with the outcome of, the Astros not really being penalized in terms of no player was actually penalized at all. Just
right.
The general manager and the manager, and essentially the MLBPA was able to kind of cite to a loophole in that Robert Manfred had sent out a memo saying if there is any sort of cheating situation such as sign stealing, players can't be held accountable. And that's kind of what the MLBPA is relied upon and has been able to use to show why those players shouldn't be punished. And it just goes to the strength of that union. And I think on the flip side, you look at what's going on with NFLPA and how they're handling the current CBA negotiations with the NFL owners, and you just kind of see how, granted, same situation in terms of individual players with their individual opinions, but you see how the NFLPA is kind of on the opposite spectrum of strength as a union as a whole, and that they're willing to take a deal that kind of caters to owners and kind of caters to what the league is willing to provide them, but they aren't willing to take a deal that strengthens themselves for the long run. Granted, there are some things in that they're being able to improve on, but I think with the whole onus on the 17-game season and the cap for the 17th game and just a 10-year deal as a whole, and this 10-year of a window is just so long in this day of age with how media rights are handled and how streaming or cable, just how everything that relates with that and the revenue that can be made off of that, it's just kind of short-sighted in terms of, but I mean, honestly, I think the NFL owners know that, and the league knows that, and that they know I think DeMaurice Smith even mentioned, this new CBA caters to 60% of the athletes and consider that a win. I mean, the NFLPA is a big league, and granted, they don't have the benefits of being able to kind of confine what they think is most important because there's so many different players, there's so many different ranging, salaries or prominence that it's kind of hard to cater to them all. But when it comes down to it, NFLPA, MLBPA, NBAPA, it's all the same in that the players are the product. And if the players fail to realize that they're the product and the strength of behind what's being promoted by the league or on TV, then they're going to fail to see that they should negotiate something that shows their worth as opposed to something they're willing to take at the time. I think one big thing that's always talked about is that, there's still a whole year left before the CBA expires. But they're kind of negotiating now as if there's no deal, there's going to be no season. There's going to be a season. It's just that, if the owners want to put an artificial deadline on them and make them feel as if they have to sign it, then they're going to feel a way because they fail to see if they're the actual product that people are going to want to see as opposed to the owners. I think that's one big thing that the NBA has been able to grasp. Granted, their union has a lot of strong individuals involved, and it's a smaller union, so it's easier to kind of give them what they want. But they definitely have seen in the NBA that the players and what the players put out on the court is what fans come to see, and it applies to all leagues. So if you're unable to see that, you're able to see your actual worth and what you should ask for. And I think that's where the NFLPA kind of struggles.
Right. Alan Wilmot, ladies and gentlemen. Alan Wilmot, one of the brightest in the industry we're talking with today. Hey, Alan, I'm going to switch gears here one more time. I know you're on a tight schedule, so we will finish up here pretty quickly, but I want to switch gears one more time and talk a little bit more about the sports betting side of things. We have, the audience of this show is pretty heavy in the gaming space, and so I know they're itching for me to ask a sports betting related question. So I'm going to keep it Florida related since you're down in Miami area. Give me a little, insight into where Florida stands with this whole sports betting issue, and how quickly you think, your prediction, I know nobody knows, but how quickly we might be able to see it being legalized here in Florida.
I think Florida is probably one of the toughest states to get sports betting in, not because it's something that the people don't want, but just because when it comes to, having to go in accordance with the Constitution requires, or thinking of Native American pacts that are currently in place, there's a lot of, I guess you could say, hula hoops that have to be jumped through. But I do think that Florida is a state that is itching for sports betting. I think it's something that the people are going to continue to ask for. And if I was to probably put an estimation on time, and like you mentioned, it's impossible because it changes every year. And then once the state gets a law in place, then how long until it's implemented, So so many stages. But I would hope that Florida would be able to hop on the sports betting train within the next 2 years, hopefully.
That's my hope too. I mean, sooner rather than later. But I mean, and one of the biggest things they're dealing with, right, is the whole Indian tribes and getting through some of those, like you said, loopholes or hula hoops they have to jump through. I'm assuming that's quite the battle there, right, or quite the discussion and agreement that kind of has to come into play working with those organizations.
For sure, that's actually probably the main one. Just making sure that all parties involved feel that the one's not being taken advantage of by the other, and making sure that whatever pacts are in place are being adhered to. Because it's tough to put a sports betting regulation in place if a party who has been granted exclusivity to sports betting or to gambling in general all of a sudden feels as if they're losing the benefits they're afforded in the first place.
Yeah, for sure. What about across the rest of the United States? Are you seeing anything that stands out? Any state that you think, may come on board here sooner rather than later? I know there's always talk. There's a lot of news, day in and day out across the states. But I don't know, any nuggets around, I guess, the legalization side that you might be able to give us here before we go?
For sure. It's probably more so on the opinion side, but I think one state that's probably going to have to come around more so to sports betting is probably a state that's already involved, and that's New York. I think with New York, the biggest issue with them is that they allow sports betting, but they refuse to allow mobile sports betting. And I just think in this day and age, that when everyone's so plugged into their phone and anything can be done online via computer, if you're going to allow sports betting, you have to allow the whole thing. You can't just stop at live person sports betting. If you're going to allow it, you have to make sure that it encompasses mobile. Otherwise, especially in New York, where all those states are so close together, where I can just hop in my car and drive to New Jersey or any other state up there that allows mobile, they're losing. And I think it's already been reported that they're losing so much potential revenue to their neighboring states who allow mobile because they refuse to do it themselves. If I can just drive across state lines, sit in my car, log in, and just drive back when I'm done, I would rather that be done in my own state as opposed to losing it to neighboring states. So I think that's New York is definitely a state that probably needs to, keep in mind what's going on around them and hopefully make a necessary change.
I mean, why are they struggling so much with that decision? Why is that? And again, this is opinion. This is, I realize you don't have all the answers, but it blows my mind. I don't get what the hang up is, and how they can't, I guess, move forward with that. Cause it's like everyone sees it. I'm sure everyone in the state sees it. Everyone in the surrounding states sees it, but it's like, they just can't move forward with it. I mean, what's the hang up here? Is it a legal thing? Is it a political thing? What is the hang up over there? Do you have any insight into that?
I couldn't tell you specifically what's hanging up there. I'm sure someone more detailed in the usual court could, but I just think it's more so. I think New York's always been a state that has kind of been slow to catch on to what's going on, and then when they do catch on to what's going on, they've been slow to adapt. I think one thing you can see there is not just with the sports betting, but also with daily fantasy sports and the recent ruling they had where they said that daily fantasy sports was no longer considered an exempt category of gaming, and all of a sudden falls underneath the gambling statute. I mean, there's been, but they'll do that, but then they'll also allow current daily fantasy sports operators such as FanDuel or DraftKings to continue operating, which it kind of blows my mind because they have allowed them to operate based on the presumption they need a license, and they were able to grant them a license, but then they won't grant any other operators a temporary license to operate. But then the law comes out and says, you know what, you don't need a license anymore. Go ahead and offer daily fantasy sports as a exempt skill game. But they say you still need a license, and the law comes out again. Not a law, but a ruling comes out again saying, actually, never mind. Daily fantasy sports is actually gambling. So even if you do have a license, it doesn't really matter because the license, you can't use it to exempt yourself. So there's just so much going on up there that they really aren't able to kind of hone in on, what they should do.
Sure. The merry-go-round continues. It's like it makes my head spin, makes my head almost blow up. So I'm glad I'm not the decision maker, I guess, up in there. But so Alan Wilmot. Alan, I definitely appreciate you joining me today. Where can the audience, if they wanted to get a hold of you, maybe they have a startup, maybe they have just, like you said, general counsel or something they're looking for, I would highly recommend you guys reach out to Alan. If so, where would they get a hold of you? How would they get a hold of you? What's the best way of reaching you?
Definitely. You can, like you mentioned earlier, I work at Heitner Legal. If you have any other questions or if you just want to come and just get some tidbits, like I mentioned, I like to help and assist all the way I can with IP, startups, any stage, any process. You can reach me out to me at Alan, ALAN, at Heitner, HEITNER, legal.com. Feel free to follow me as well on Twitter, Alan Wilmot Law, ALANWILMOT Law. Both handles, Twitter, Instagram, where I like to provide certain tidbits. I also have a personal website where you can also check out where I post from time to time what's going on in the daily fantasy sports intellectual property world, and that's AlanWilmotLaw.com.
Amazing. All of those links will be in the show notes, so you don't have to write them down and scramble and get them. I'll get all of those in the show notes to this episode. That way people can get out to you as they need. So, Alan, man, I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed becoming a little closer to you and almost consider you a friend in this industry now. And so really looking forward to meeting up again at another event in the near future and hopefully learning more. I feel like I learn so much every time I sit down with you. So thank you for your time. I know it's valuable time, and I really appreciate you joining me, Alan.
Most definitely. I appreciate the time, and I look forward to coming on again and speaking about any other updates or changes.
All right. Appreciate it again. Guys, that was Alan Wilmot of Heitner Legal joining us, giving us some tidbits on the legal side of things in the gaming industry. One of the best in the business. So I appreciate you all tuning in. Until next time, have a great one. Alan, take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Noob Sports Show. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider subscribing to our iTunes channel today. Plus, visit us at noobsports.com for more picks, previews, strategy, and news. That's KNUPsports.com.